Hi, we're going to start our live stream today in a quicker way. It was faster because I'm really behind schedule. My head is spinning and all. We're going to start. Right on. So today's live stream will be a quicker thing. So we're going to start our live stream today. And the questions are simple. Okay. We're in Sao Paulo, and today, let me just tidy up a little bit here. Something that's wrong, we've improved it. Here it is. Okay, we're in Sao Paulo. Today is July 1st, 2021. Questions for the new world. So our live stream today is focused on for anyone who can or wants to participate in a neuroscience competition. That's what it is. A course like the Mathematics Olympiad competition will also have a Neuroscience Olympiad for Latin America. But I'm going to approach it a little differently. I'm going to show you that the neuroscience competition can be very useful for you in your normal life, in your normal way of being. So the neuroscience competition is based on some questions in a neuroscience Olympiad, which will be the Neuro Challenge LATAM. For high school students up to 17 years old, 16 years old, and so on, talking about neuroscience. The basis of this contest is to try to awaken all teenagers to neuroscience. What is neuroscience? What can it do, or what can it improve for the world? And we are taking this line and helping and supporting a group of people, of researchers, who want to put on this LATAM challenge, the LATAM Neuro Challenge for all of Latin America. What is the idea? Anyone, any student from 18 to 28 years old, including high school students, 17 to 28 years old. It involves high school, it involves scientific initiation, it involves masters and doctoral students up to 28 years old who want to open their minds, who want to show new possibilities in neuroscience. Jackson, but how am I going to show the new possibilities of neuroscience if I haven't studied neuroscience yet? Look, that's why you're so important for this. That's why you need to understand something that's difficult even for researchers to understand. Neuroscience first. Neuroscience isn't just neurons and blood. The science that studies neural communication, the nervous system, the brain, and peripheral organs, right? So it can be reduced to neurons or blood. No, that's not it. Neuroscience is a scientific field that looks at the whole and sees how this whole stimulates your nervous system, both peripheral and central. But man, the nervous system is rooting all your internal organs, rooting your whole body. So it's a whole. It's a whole as well. But when neuroscience starts studying these relationships, it goes deeper and it creates a jargon, the neuroscientific jargon. It's jargon that only neuroscience researchers are beginning to understand. And those looking from the outside think, wow, how complex this area is, how difficult and important it is. In this jargon, these neuroscientists start to feel like they're in a great place where questions are simply based on the latest paper written on the subject, and it's one thing after another, because neuroscience isn't based on papers. It is what it is. It's contained within the publications. It can't expand too much. It's all very neat, a document with evidence to create very strong science. It's based on publications, it doesn't have a foundation for publications, and now there's a neuroscience competition. This neuro challenge can greatly open up the field, and you do the neuro challenge. My challenge will even be useful for neuroscientists to understand a little better or to start having questions, including more relevant ones about human behavior, more relevant to human existence. Sometimes the questions are more related to this or that disease or pathology or way of being. When she starts to open up a little more, she opens up the field. She goes into economics, she goes into religion, she goes... So it all relates to nutrition. Then it broadens in neuroscience. It departs from the optimal location. What is the optimal location to help you understand better? The optimum location is when you start searching. The optimum location comes when I learned about the optimum location. It comes from evolutionary computing and when you have a problem-solving system. And this problem-solving system reaches an optimum and it gets stuck at that optimum, which is an optimum location, because the jargon, the words, the concepts it has, the way it solves the problem, a small linear change doesn't take it out of the optimum location. I have to search for ancestral solutions, very original and old solutions, to get out of the optimum location. So I have to break through the jargon of that science because it becomes redundant in a specific place. So suddenly what I have to do is a broader concept or a different name or different words to try to get those people out of that jargon. For example, have you ever met someone who is fanatical about a certain religion? If you notice the way these people speak and the words they use, they are words that always leave them in that place. They are in a specific place. Yes, but that person's specific place is basically a confined space. They can't get out of that place. The mind is closed to that. It only thinks about that. It is that. It does that. So it's in a great place. This happens in all areas of knowledge. It's not just when a person becomes a religious extremist. An extremist politician also does this. An ideologue who believes in flying saucers also does this. So anyone can fall into that great place. That fall into that great place, to lose your composure, to leave that great place? Good questions. And that's where we're entering these Latin American neuro challenges. We can have questions. Who are we being before we even ask? Because sometimes the question is linked to your world and your way of seeing the world, and your way of seeing the world is already restricted. But what other questions can you have? What new avenues can you open for Latin America? What do I say about Latin America? We were greatly humiliated. We were greatly trampled upon. We were massacred by a European culture, by a culture from the Northern Hemisphere that considers itself superior. It always considers itself superior. That came, exploited, and colonized bodies and territories. That's why we talk a lot about the body territory, so that our state unit isn't simply the family. The family is a group of people whose definition isn't defined by you. Who defines what a family is? Some politicians and some religions will say what a family is, but in reality, they will control the concept of family. So we define the body territory. Referencing this body territory within you, it's you where you are, in the environment you are in the water you drink, where you dispose of your trash, where your food comes from, all of this extension where your electricity comes from. Some even come from Itaipu, others from the local community, from a local dam. But where do the things that nourish you come from, that give you sustainability where you are? That is a body territory. It's you and the extension of the things that come to you. Obviously, things can come from various parts of the world, but the body territory is something broader. It is within this context that people are situated, and you can study them. A body, a territory. The territory is like a minimal state. How interesting, like the minimum of the state. If you were to cut up the state, and you will cut it up into the smallest possible part of a state, the smallest possible part of a... It's not a piece of a body, it's a whole body, and it could be a square meter of land with that body on top. Then I would arrive at, if that body is stationary in that square meter and living in that square meter, which is very difficult, but if it were, then the minimum of a state is a body territory. Our colonization is different from that territory there in how they exploit forests and people and other DNAs. So in colonization, you have a predatory mercenary exploiting us. In the LATAM Neuro Challenge, which we are supporting now, a movement of researchers, for those who already work with BRB and to participate in these neuroscience competitions, what we want to address is, what are some future questions you might have? What can you use? What can you study in neuroscience? What is neuroscience? It's the anatomy of the entire body and the relationship of this anatomy to brain functions, to the entire nervous system. How is this regulated? How does it work? How do you come to live and exist? How does this thing called consciousness come about? The mind. What is the Damasian mind? What did Antonio Damasio say about the mind? Milchev says that every human being is predictive. What does predictive mean? Do you understand? And then you have some terms that I use specifically and with the intention of being different terms, because by being different terms, I can take a researcher out of a great place, out of the scientific jargon where he is locked in and cannot see the bigger picture. He cannot see that despite his focus on this research project, his lack of openness continues to put politicians in the spotlight who will not release money for other types of research. Unless it's the kind of research that doesn't question our politicians, that doesn't question the Constitution itself, because the 1988 Constitution, so beautiful and rich, isn't being fully implemented. We have to fight for the rights of adolescents, children, and the elderly. We have to fight for those who don't have land because it seems the financial system has seized our land and they own it. Predatory mercenaries who have held the state and kidnapped it. Do you understand the idea? All this emotion I'm conveying to you now and this indignation suddenly arrives. Hey, you're talking, but does that mean that me at 17, 18, 20 years old, can do a study on neuroscience and address the religious aspects? Political aspects, of course, yes. Always with materiality, always awareness and evidence, nothing of super narratives, always seeking cause and effect and knowing. The effect is the cause of the things that follow. For example, the money we have and that circulates in our society is created through debt. Money created through debt is causing society suffering and anguish. This anguish leads the pharmaceutical industry to monetize a lot of money to produce medication for anguish. And medicine also monetizes people who are anguished, and because of this anguish, eat more, drink more, and do things that harm their own bodies. Yes, but what is the cause of anguish? Aha! The cause is money and debt. And why not question the causes of things? Why do we only study the effects and try to repair them instead of addressing the root cause? So, before a question, excuse me, before a new technology, someone was asking, before any cultural transformation, there was a question. So the challenge. LATAM is roughly that. What is your question? Man, sometimes I talk to some people and I get sad because they're basically working within other people's narratives, basically for other people's causes. basically for the faith that was instilled in them when they were 3, 4, or 5 years old. The faith has already taken hold. So they have a narrative that isn't theirs. They simply defend things that belong to others, but have already incorporated them, thinking they are their own. They aren't yours. What's your question? What is the essence of life for you? So you have a question that you can build upon or look at, see the structures. That which we are, human structures, and knowing how it fits, how neuroscience can change some things. Like this new world, truly, I feel that the only solution we are having will come from Latin America. Even though some researchers and my friends say that nothing good comes out of Latin America, I think that something very good and very strong will come out of here. We have terms that were born from our ancestral Latin American origins, complex terms like Utupe, Pei Utupe, Utupe, I told you, remember? They are brain images. What you see, or even what you think, are brain images. Pei Utupe is when these images capture our emotions. Xapiri is like the spirit of things, the essence of things. Jiwasa is a type of entity that comes from more than two people coming together, or from different ideas from different selves. A Jiwasa appears. Yami is almost an imitation of being in order to transcend that being. And there's the body territory and decolonial neuroscience. Strong terms. Terms that take the researcher out of their comfort zone, out of their optimal place, to look at the world in a broader way and not be reduced to being to what they believe. Their faith, and often blind faith, I've spoken with some researchers about it, and it's sad to think about, but a good portion of the researchers, it's a Christian deity. Come on, boy. The body territory, the Latin American continent. It's not the Latin continent, but Latin America. I even like to call it the Latin American continent. We, Latin Americans, this Latinity that we have is because of the peoples who lived here, the original peoples. If the original peoples weren't here, this information wouldn't have passed on. We wouldn't have reciprocity, democracy. Democracy was born with its origins. In Europe, democracy came from the Enlightenment. Remember what I told you in the book, The Awakening of Everything? They took all the papers from Europe, all the European publications, and concluded that liberty, equality, fraternity lacked the technological resources to express writing, the means to enable enlightenment in Europe. The Enlightenment in Europe came after the invasion of the American continent, after contact with the Amerindians, which we naturally, evidently, we put a lot of pressure on the Amerindian communities and these ancestral peoples, but they passed something on to us. And besides, we are in the same territory, we share the same identity, we are together. No matter how much you may not want to admit it, we are in this together. Yes, the market bites us here and there. It bites with petty squabbles, with ideologies, and with the religiosity of labeling it an enemy. It's not. It bites by creating these enemies, so that in doing so there's a false unity, which now leaks out falsely. And that's where you come in. What question do you ask to change the world? The question as a neuroscientist is how your way of being and thinking can change the world. What question do you have that adds value to human nature, to human existence, and to the existence of the forests and biomes? What value does it have? So the neuro challenge is something very powerful. Money today is born from debt. It is basically created from debt. Why can't it be created with 10 citizens? Drex, a citizen, would be you as a body, territory, the minimum unit of the state in my concepts. Being the minimum unit of the state, being the owner of the state, it's not the mercenaries. Predators who have the state hijacked, who own the state, that's you. The mercenaries and the predators want you to think that the state is only there to bite you, but you are the state, the minimal state of a person with another territory. So at this moment, you who own the state, why doesn't the state give you a state income? That's a state income. Directly, citizen, every day. Why not? Right now, it's because your head and mind, with games, with information, with social networks, the communication system overwhelming you, and bills to pay. Circles in Brazil are making a lot of money and using capitalism, that neoliberal capitalism, with the invisible hand of the market. This invisible hand is laundering money. It throws it into fiscal paralysis, and it comes here in the form of dollars, and it comes there in the form of investment. But if the government does this, otherwise the money in dollars leaves the country. This money in dollars was leaked out of here. It was laundered. So these maneuvers, these ways of doing things, you can't directly question them. The Neuro Challenge will say the following: yes, and why does the system continue like this? Why isn't our system like the body system where the cell gains energy and produces it? Isn't that how the state should be? That's how the state should be. And why isn't it? Because our vote is going to those who think differently. If our vote goes to those who think similarly, that you have to receive energy, that energy you produce, that the state is you. Things change. Your vote becomes better. And your vote, by putting people in better positions, brings in new representatives, senators, mayors, councillors. Things naturally improve. So the change is within. And this Neuro Challenge is designed for you to work on these strengths. Every time you notice something, create spaces within yourself. I gave you the example of 5 dimensions where these spaces are created. Normally you use 2 dimensions, XYZ and XYZ, the 3 dimensions that we have in the distance axis. But if I take a distant territory body, in terms of body width and height, so there are 3 dimensions. In those 3 dimensions, what I perceive goes inside. But more, what I perceive is the representation of what I perceived. I see something. I'm seeing my hand here. You're seeing my hand too. I see my hand. Upon seeing my hand, this image enters through my eyes and goes behind my neck. It's processed and creates a space. This space within this body territory, and this space in 3 dimensions. It has width, height, and length, yes, but it also has one more dimension. It moves, because before I saw the hand, there was no hand. Now the hand has appeared, so it's movement. The hand appeared, it rose, it appeared and rose in my head, in my dream, okay? But sometimes the hand is there, it just appears, but it doesn't have any quality. But suddenly a shine appears on it, something intense or a pulsation. That's quality. So we have 3 dimensions, movement and quality. The essence, the light, the shine, the charm, the drawing of attention in a quality that can be a movement in these 3 dimensions that you represent within your brain. Look at this interesting question we have. What are the abstractions of our perception within ourselves? And furthermore, when you perceive something new, you perceive it with areas, with brain spaces activated within you. You perceive new things with your memories, with your recollections, as they are called in Spanish, your recollections with your way of being and living. Way of being and living are internal spaces of this body territory. Look at the questions you can ask. How does Yami participate in your entire cultural formation from infancy until you die? Yami is that little baby who starts to imitates customs, imitates habits, imitates beliefs, imitates faith. After faith, there are still 2 strong paths. Blind faith, where you only accept and obey, like in the bubbles you have on social media. You only accept that something is true when it's lacking, and you obey. Then you enter into blind faith. You don't have the blood of being. You limit yourself to being the bubble. but that faith can also lead to high performance. You look at your faith, you continue with that faith, and you improve it to achieve greater performance. And you have critical thinking, you have humor, you have innocence because you passed the yin-haming test for high performance and didn't stop at blind faith within a bubble, within the optimal place, thinking that's the end of it, a reduction of being. How can you measure all this? There's no direct measurement, but you can look at the EG, you're looking at the electrical part, brain tensions, those neural firings, cerebral tensions. You can look at the NIS. It's not a direct measurement of the neuronal system. The NIS will look at if a part of the brain starts to become more active, it consumes more nutrients, more things. So you'll look at oxide and deoxide, hemoglobin, you'll look at the blood, because if some part of the brain is more active, it will consume more oxide, it will unbalance oxide, deoxide, and hemoglobin. NARS, you can see heart rate, galvanic skin response, EMG, eye track, eye movement, the pupil dilating and contracting as it moves. Hyperscanning, you can see several people, 2, 3, 30 people at the same time to see if there's coherence, to see if we have Jiwasa, to know if we have us together, all of us together. So your questions are fundamental. The way you explore, the way you ask the question is fundamental. And then you start to have an opportunity, and you give an opportunity with your questions, with your writing. I spoke a lot with the mentors of the Neuro Challenge, man. It starts with the city halls. Offer essays to the city hall about neuroscience, the best essays. Classify these people to enter the competition so that we can change neuroscience. Neuroscience is colonized. Neuroscience is based on a self that is not body territory, a self that is nowhere in the body, but it doesn't talk about this self. The neuroscientist is basically trapped within Christianity. What questions will he have? Oh, the questions have nothing to do with Christianity. Yes, they don't, but they are limiting to Christianity. It prevents you from having other questions to get out of that box, to get out of that ideal place, and that's my challenge. 17 to 28 years old. It depends on your age. Look for a neuro challenge. Look for something in your city that you can do. What is neuroscience? How can neuroscience change you and those around you? In some way, you can see the world differently. Because truly, like Gabriel Pensador used to say, right, the world changes with the change of mind. It changes and the world changes. Ask a different question. What is your question? That will change the world and it will change you. Folks, that's what I wanted to leave you with this week, the LATAM Neuro Challenge. I mean, how can a young person age 17 to 28 make neuroscientific proposals? Start studying neuroscience and ask questions for a new, more sustainable world. A new world with standing forests, not felled ones, and monetizing those mercenaries who simply want to exploit them. They want to exploit and prey on all of Latin America. Now, the trend is to extract rare minerals, okay? But it will always be one thing, always prey. And the trend is also to prey on your attention span. With social media, what do you use to hold on to your attention span? To monetize. So the Neuro Challenge comes along and looks at the current problems and goes to the root cause. What is the money created through debt causing? What is the rapid capture of the entire population's attention by social media causing? How can neuroscience change this? What is the mechanism? Come on, people. Nobody knows. You propose. Now we have these artificial intelligences that you can use to do things, and artificial intelligence greatly helps your DNA intelligence, which is very different from artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is more logical, it's rational. DNA intelligence, you live with the information that comes to you. It's totally different, but they can be complementary. You can open a new world through your way of thinking, and that's right. That's what I wanted to leave you with. Neuro Challenge will start this year. It will be launched at Falam in Santiago, Chile. And next year will begin to be a little more open so that everyone can participate and propose questions, experiments, or concepts about neuroscience, anatomy, and physiology. What does it mean to be a decolonial neuroscience to put the country ahead? A Latin America above these concepts of minimization, of cognitive restriction, even among ourselves. I talk a lot about EIQ. EIQ is the way of being based on your DNA, how you create your worlds and concepts independently of the culture you are in. Nowadays, culture holds you back in her own way. You don't have the freedom to be yourself. You're a piece of a culture. No, let's open up this axis. Let's open up the freedom to be and live and to perceive and express oneself at the DNA level and not limited by a culture, obviously below in commitment to local norms. Yes, but the state also recognizing that an individual body and territory is a fundamental component in creating the norms of the territory and not a law from up there in Brasilia imposing enormous rules on any place in the country, in different territories, saying rules and norms in different territories. No, that is a limitation of being. This is limiting our ethos, our way of perceiving and expressing ourselves at the DNA level, and not the cultural limitation imposed from above. Folks, that's what I wanted to leave you with this week. Until next Wednesday.